Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys.
Joining me in Chyland Studios today is Gareth Evans from Remaster Your Mind. He is coming from, well, you're going to tell us where you're located in England. That'll work better for us. But he's coming on today to speak to us about PTSD and trauma therapy. I am going to let him get into it. Hopefully he'll let me speak. We've been speaking for about 30 minutes now and finally realized we both have the gift of gab. So Gareth, thank you for coming on today and educating us on your program and this wonderful book that I'm about to go through later too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, firsthand, for allowing me to come on here. And you were talking a second ago about how long we've been having a talk before we pressed the record button, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you. As you said, that I'm from England originally, from Hereford, which is very close to the Welsh border. And currently I'm back and forth living in Colchester with my wife, which is northeast of London.
I appreciate you telling me that, because when we first got on the phone, you thought I was in Texas. So,
still do.
And you can still think I'm in Texas. That is totally fine. I'm sure it's a little warmer there. But we're both very candid on the fact that we're like, I think it's really cool where you are, but I've never been there. So I have no visual in my mind of how to explain. I can tell you I looked up a map when I got off the phone with you the first time, because I just wanted to have a visual of like where you were, and especially when we were talking about when you were growing up, what it looked like literally living in a border town. Do you know the movie The Greasers? Like the kids, it's like the kids on the wrong side of the tracks. Like that's what it reminded me of. Like you're just some English little bad boy on the wrong side of the tracks, just trying to be a good boy one day.
Yeah, that's very accurate, to be honest.
Yeah.
If you just look at my hometown, the pictures are very quaint, to be honest. Although it's got doesn't show much of what's going on in the background. If you used to have a Google, Hereford or Leominster, originally where I'm from.
Wow. Yeah, I've never visited anything like where you're from at all. I've honestly only seen, movies on TV of depictions of what it might look like. But I mean, I guess if we're going to start anywhere, that would probably be the best place to start, is like what your upbringing was like and what really got you in the military in the first place.
Well, when I look at my family and my local area, you are a product of your environment as much as you are a product of your family. My parents, when I was growing up, my mum ruled the house with an iron fist. My dad was very immobile. He was disabled. And when I went to school, the school, as I said, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. So now my hometown is the crossing point to the drug trafficking between England and Wales. Now, if you know much about English geography, there's a lot of drugs happening in Birmingham and Wolverhampton, and all those drugs travel through Leominster before they go anywhere and distributing all over Wales. And that in itself breeds violence and I don't want to say gang warfare, but there's a lot of people wanting to fight one another. And it also creates a reputation. Now, there was lots of dotted towns and villages around my area where we would go across to there just to show masculinity and fight them as much as they would come to our town and get drunk in our bars and talk to our girls and want to fight us, or just antagonizing, however that looked. So when I was growing up, drugs was very rife. There was 3 drug dealers on my street, and my brother was one of them. I remember one stage, I'm sure my brother won't mind me talking about it now because it is in the past, but my dad used to hide his wallet under his pillow with fear of my brother stealing money from that wallet before he was to buy the next score of drugs or whatever that looked like. So when I was growing up, there was lots of violence. There was drugs always in the background. And there was always people wanting to put you down. So you learned very quickly to fight or flight, which we'll talk about more in a little while, as there's other little bits and pieces that adds on to the fight and flight. But I learned from a young age to fight, stand my ground, because it was frowned upon if I was with my friends and they was to be fighting and someone was to run, they would stop becoming your friend very quickly. So I've got a number of siblings, and as we went through life, we all turned to one thing or another. So my brother was, as I said, turned to the drugs, where he was a dealer for one of the big names of the local area. My other brother went to alcohol, and I joined the military. I've got other siblings, but I focused on joining the army. I joined the army for a number of reasons. My eldest brother was a soldier, so when I was growing up, sort of had awe in my eyes for him because he was very masculine. Again, he was going on holidays everywhere, and he was going to Barbados with his wife, and he was showing me a life that I wanted, and I liked that freedom. And also, the reason why I joined the army was I generally wanted to take that step further. I've been in many fights, but I wanted to end someone's life legally without getting into trouble myself. And the best thing to do that was to serve Queen and Country. Well, back then it's Queen and Country. And now it's going to be the King as such. So, yeah, my upbringing, I was actually studying art and religion education. And I got quite involved in my art pieces. My teacher was my favourite teacher. And he really encouraged me to bring out lots of the artistic side of myself. It wasn't until I was 17 that I decided to make that leap and join the army.
So you went from arts and religion to the army really quick. I do not remember that in our original interview. So even me, I'm like, that's a hell of a turn.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a dark turn too.
No, I would say that there wasn't a turn at all. It was very level playing field. I mean, I had my one hand, I was drawing and I was painting. Another hand, I was very intrigued of the Black Death, of all the different religions and holy wars and everything else. But at the same time, I was also dealing with friends who would go around to the house and they would either want to fight someone or want to smoke something. Mm-hmm. So, although it may appear there's going to be a very direct angle, it was very similar. I mean, in every way you looked at it, it was just a blended lifestyle. One person would look at it and say it's very soft and bubbly. The other person would look at it and say that's very sharp and edgy.
So then how did this experience in the army shape not necessarily who you are today, but that person that you were coming into?
When you join the army makes you or creates a soldier out of you. So you're taught to be stoic. And what I mean by the listeners that don't really understand fully what stoic means is to be emotionless. So if you are with your mates, your comrades, your soldiers, or your brethren, however that looks, and you get into a fight, you can't try and placate it. You can't calm that fight down, especially if you're on the battlefield. You need to fight to the finish. You need to exploit the enemy. There's no time to give one another a hug and say, are you okay? How's that grazed knee? You need to tell them to man up and push out and fight the enemy that is fighting you. So in basic training, the very, very beginning of your army career, you are taught to stop being a civilian, lose the emotion, become stoic, and be aggressive when it needs to be. And I'm not talking here about the tooth arms, the sabre squadrons, the sabre regiments, not so much the logistics, the catering or the mail side of the army, because there is a bit of a difference there. If you look at the British Army, when you have the paratroopers mixed in with the tank transporters, they're two very different jobs and there's two very different outcomes. One outcome is the paratroopers need to be very aggressive, where the tank transporters need to be a little bit more savvy of how to engage a vehicle onto another vehicle.
How many tours did you do? You were back and forth quite a few times, weren't you?
Yeah, well, in the British Army you do 6-month tours, whereas I know that in America that you do a year tour. So I've been to Iraq 4 times, and I went to Afghanistan twice.
And this was over a 20-year period, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the first 15 years I was in something called the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, which was my Tooth Arm Regiment, Scotland's only cavalry. That although we have horses, we go to war in tanks. Now the remaining 5 years of my army career was in the Army Welfare Service, where I realised that I had a problem and I needed to solve that problem, and that was to help the other people. I realised I had a good knack for it. So my 20 years was 15 years in the one and 5 years in the other before I come out and I started my business.
So those 5 years were, I don't want to say the most transformational, but they obviously like shed some light on why you went through the last 15 to show you who you are today. Because that's when you did a lot of the like neuroscience. We talked about the hypnotherapist that you worked under. Like that 5 years working with that, is that where you got the brunt of your knowledge from?
Excluding the hypnotherapy, yes. I knew just before I left my frontline regiments, I worked in basic training where I was teaching recruits how to become soldiers, teaching them about first aid or chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear warfare or karma concealment, survive and extract. And it was during that time there when my regiment was calling me back and saying, look, we need to go to the next tour. I've had that realization that I needed to break away from it, and I wasn't in the best place. And I actually read a book called The Chimp Paradox by Professor Stephen Peters. And that really got me excited to learn more about my subconscious and my conscious, to understand that it's not just face value. So when I transferred over to the Army Welfare Service, those 5 years really did give me the building blocks of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, neuroscience, all these different lecturers, Sigmund Freud, they were all showing me how to help other people in a very professional capacity. And I had lots of experience with coaching and mentoring. So that kind of made its own sphere of the direction I was going to. It wasn't until I left the Army Welfare Service, left the Army entirely, that my wife presented me with rapid transformational therapy, the hypnotherapy as we look at it. And I very quickly identified that not so much a gap in the market, but a gap in my headspace. And I needed to fix what was going on inside. I was using the Army Welfare Service to help other people, but I was really masking my problems. And it wasn't until I had to do my own soul searching, my own pilgrimage as such, although there was nowhere to go apart from home. And I managed to almost put the pieces of the puzzle together to identify what PTSD is, what CPTSD is, and sort of bind them together and figure out a solution, because I tried the way the Army was giving me to overcome PTSD, but there was nothing I don't want to say tangible. There's nothing tangible about it. When you're going through problems, you need to understand what the problem is before you can get over it. And my journey that I took, I realized that there was many people that was asking for this same journey, but not aware of how to ask for it. So, just talking about all the building blocks, all my life experiences, and understanding truly what anxiety is, truly what depression is. When you sat there and thinking, do you know what, I just wish I would be driving my car and overtake me, and as I'm being overtaken, I'll be like, oh, I'm worthless. I just want to kill myself. It's just a bad place. And that dark place, I was aware of not only what it looks like, but how it feels. So when I talk with people that's got in a very similar headspace, I can massively relate and say, look, you're not alone in this. You are not not alone. In fact, I have been there. I've got the T-shirt, and in fact, I'll send you the T-shirt. You can wear it if you don't want that. And wear it with pride, because you shouldn't hide away from your mental health. In fact, it should always be on the forefront. And I think, in all honesty, that's what you guys over in the States really do well, is self-help. Over here in the UK, it's something to be hidden away from. There's so much stigma hiding behind mental health. I don't know specific how bad it is or how good it is over there. I just know that there's a lot of self-help over in America, and it's an eye-opener, and it feels really good to see that people are getting it. I'm just excited perhaps for people to see my method, because I take pleasure in life by seeing people have that aha moment, and that light bulb moment, say, this is working, and the transformation. I can sit back and I can smile from ear to ear all day long when I see people truly getting better towards themselves.
Watching people being released from their own suffering and even having the awareness that what they're changing, they're choosing, has been a very powerful thing for me to observe as well. What you said previously about us having our self-help, I don't know when there was a turn from stigmatism to rah-rah mental health. I feel like it's happened along with everything else that's going over. So I think it's really cool for you to observe from the UK. You're like, hey, you guys are really doing good over there with mental health, because growing up, it was a really big stigma and it wasn't talked about. And I mean, even like my struggles with suicide and suicide ideation alone, I remember being very young and being very passionate about how I was feeling. And I would try to explain very aggressively, like, I just do not want to fucking do this anymore. My life's honestly not bad. Like, there's so many other people out there who have it worse than me, right? Like, why am I sitting here literally trying to give God this soul back? And I just remember how stigmatized it was. And if you wanted help, you went to a mental institution and they put you on medicine, and you ate candy from a vending machine, and you didn't do anything in this mental facility besides whatever the guidelines for mental health were at the time. I never went to any of these facilities, but I had friends who would consistently be a rotating door through the mental health system where we were from. So I got a front row seat to what they would do. I had a friend who was in there. I was in 7th grade. I was in there, and he would call me from the hospital. It was some weird Joker Harley Quinn thing is kind of how I feel about it now. But he would just be like, yeah, I'm in here. I freaked out on my stepdad again. And I tried to self-harm, so now I'm in here for like a minimum of like 2 weeks or something, or until my stuff's better. And I would be like, tell me what it's like walk me through your day. And I still remember being that young and just being so inquisitive about the way that they were handling this kid with mental health issues. I mean, yeah, he obviously had some teenage angst issues and some respect issues, but something else had happened to him in his younger years to make him really act out that way. And even from a young age, I thought it was weird that a lot of people were treated like criminals for mental health issues. So I'm sorry to hear that it is still supremely stigmatized over there, just because I do think America is turning a lot of heads when it comes to self-help and mental health. But you also have the new age spiritual takeover of buy some Lululemons and do some yoga, and I promise love and light is all you'll find. And I find that really annoying, because there is nothing super awesome love and lighting about finding out that your reality is bullshit and you're being controlled by people that you don't even know, and you're yelling at the wrong people. So,
Actually, when you was discussing that, I generally never realised that these hospitals still existed over there. Now, as soon as you was talking, I was just thinking, have you ever seen Ace Ventura?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When he dresses up in
the tutu?
In the tutu with
yes.
the American ball. And my mind goes straight to that, and I was thinking, I thought that was fake. I thought those sort of places, is that real? Or is that just sort of over the top?
Yes. So I And they could have changed now, right? The facility I'm talking about is not in operation. I was in 7th grade. He went into the local mental institution, which would have been 30, 40 minutes away from our small town. He was a minor, so his parents were allowed to sign him away. He had to do like a minimum amount of time for basically you sit in therapy and group therapy. You know, it literally is kind of like a movie, except for like in my mind, they put you on lithium and then ask you why you're fucking crazy. And it's like, well, because you just put me on lithium, you know what I'm saying? So all I knew is if I ever got to a mental health point where I was like, oh, I think I might kill myself, I should go to the hospital and get some help. I never felt that way. I never felt safe enough to go and open up like that. And when things came to a head when I was about 19 or 20, I did find myself in a doctor's office, and I had to like have a really fearful talk with myself where I was like, you have to tell the doctor the truth of what's been going on. You have to tell the doctor of what you've been doing, what you like, where you're at. Like, I just said, fuck it, tell them the truth, right? Like, you don't tell anybody else the truth. Nobody can handle the truth. I was like, let's tell this guy that like legally has to keep his mouth shut, right? So I go to this doctor, super sweet guy, and he's like, tell me when this started. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, like in your mind, he's like, tell me like when like maybe the depressive episode started or something like that. And I said, well, did it happen when I was 8 when my dog died? Did it happen 12 when I had to leave my first child at home? I was like, did it start when I was 15 when that boy told everybody in high school that I slept with him when I didn't? You know, I was still a virgin. I said, did it happen when I got my first boyfriend and he broke my heart? I said, or did it happen when I graduated high school and my fucking program ran out and I have no clue what I'm supposed to do or where I'm supposed to fit in? I was like, I just know that I think it would be really cool to die. And that is how I feel about it. I said, I don't want to sit in a bed and be depressed and cry all day, because I don't. I'm actually one of the happiest people you'll meet. I'm the friend that people call when they need something. I literally like lay down everything I'm doing in my life and put on my cape and go make sure all my friends and families and you know, like deflection. I was like, I'm coming to you today so you can tell me what's going on with me. I was like, am I bipolar? Do I have schizophrenia? Am I really seeing dead people? Like just all of these things that I don't know how you can throw at a medical professional in 30 minutes and actually expect to get anything out of it. But I sat there, and at the end of all this guy, he's, you know, writing everything down for his medical records and maybe for his like 5 o'clock talk with all the other doctors about their crazy people. And he's like, well, here with mental health, he's like, especially trying to rewire your brain, you know, the way that it's supposed to be. He's like, it's kind of like a cat. He's like, it's not like cat and mouse. I can't even remember how he said it. He used his hand like this, and he's like, you got to kind of tinker with people's minds. He's like, so we'll try a medication. It's going to be about 3 weeks. Get all your neurons lining up and everything. And then, you know, if that medication works, then maybe we'll up it a little bit. I didn't have to go through therapy, which I thought was super weird. Everybody else I knew, in order to get medication, you had to go see a licensed therapist. And I had explained, I'd done counseling when I was younger, but I'd never actually like sat down with a clinical therapist, so to speak. So he gave me some like low grade antidepressants, like 10 milligrams of, I don't even know, maybe it could have been Lexapro or something at the time, like just super minimal, right? And he's like, okay, like take this, tell me how you feel, come back in 3 weeks. So I felt weird. I felt like one of those people that had just outsourced their mental capacity over to a pill. This was like one of the worst fears that I had ever had, just because I had also had a family member who she'd struggled with depression so bad in her life that it was noted that she needed this medication. She wasn't going to operate without it. She had been medicated since like 80s, early 90s. So, I mean, like, you don't take these people off this medication, right? So, I mean, just observing her journey alone, like, I was like, I know that for my, like, I want to figure out what's going on with me because I don't want to take a pill and that be the reason that I don't dive down into the root of these issues. So I'm sitting here at 19 years old, getting ready to open up a nail salon. So I'm finishing up school for it. And I'm taking this pill that is against everything that I believe in. But I also feel like I don't have a choice because I'm breaking inside. And I'm telling people, and like nobody knows how to help or do. They just know to go like send me back to the hospital. And I'm trying not to go to the hospital where they put you on more drugs and then ask you why you're crazy. You know, the one where they like tie you to the bed. Because that's where I think I'm headed, because nobody else knows what to do. So I go back 3 weeks later and I tell them I'm feeling like a little different. Like, yeah, maybe my anxiety's down or something, but I still just feel like weird. And weird to me is I'm still seeing dead people. And I'm coming from kind of a religious family, part of it. So, I mean, basically they would probably tell you like, oh, that's Satan trying to get to you. Like, let's just pray for you. Let's just pray a little harder and like, let's just pray. So like I'm on the phone with my stepmom and she was on the phone with my aunt and I'm telling them about a child that's following me to my classroom and a guy that killed 12 people in a meat packing plant from the 90s or 80s or something like that. And I know I don't make any sense, but I can only just play like Pictionary or something with my mind at this point. I'm like, this is what I'm seeing. Can someone please tell me what's going on? So I go back to the doctor and he says, I could up the pill that you already have. He said, or I could keep this one. He goes, and I'll just add another one. He goes, now keep in mind, he's like, this is kind of a trial run. He's like, it could be up to a year before we actually find medication that works for you. So that's a lot of ups and downs with your brain. He's like, you're already going up and down. He's like, he's like bracing. Yeah, he's bracing me for the fact that I'm actually going to feel crazier, right? So before he gives me the pill, he says, just so you know, I've only given this to one other person and they actually did go crazy and wind up in the psych ward. So if you feel like killing yourself, like at all, right, just at all, just come to the ER and we'll literally detox all the medicine out of you and, you know, you'll be taken care of. So you gave me a pill that makes me want to kill myself when I don't know why I want to kill myself. I do not have schizophrenia. I am not bipolar. I am not all of these things that I have like begged. I'm like, can you guys just like, before I tell everybody I'm a medium, can you just make sure I'm not fucking crazy? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Incentive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty stunting. All I had to do is go back through my genealogy and my great-great-grandma was actually, she used to see stuff too, but the church told her that it was Satan trying to get to her, so she shut it down, but she wrote about it in her diaries. And It's just been like passed down. So there is sight in my family. Seeing dead people still freaks me out. I still have to work towards it kindly, but like I went through a whole hell of a mental health reign of some kind that, I mean, TikTok is a really good way to kind of see what the other part of the world is doing. And, yeah, it kind of mortifies me that you would even say today, like, oh, I didn't know that places like that existed. I thought that was just a movie, because that's 80s and 90s and 2000s mental health. And I don't know how we're portraying ourselves that we're ahead of the game on mental health. I think it has a lot to do with the psilocybin movement and meditation and, you know, all of basically like India's medicine coming over to America once again to reclaim the peaceful steak. But yeah, it's real, Gareth. It's real. They will give you the most messed up chemicals and then sit you in front of a therapist and ask you why you can't communicate properly. It's like,
yeah. By the way, I'm not a film buff, but have you ever seen This Is Us?
I think I have.
Yeah, well, one of the characters ended up going for therapy and then ended up going for family therapy. And it portrayed a very good sight of the direction that America have gone. Now, when he was talking about the other one, and I was thinking of, is that Ace Ventura? With this crazy person doing the reverse motion of the tackle that he once did to This Is Us, where it's very real and it's very in tune and in touch with what they're saying. I think that one of the reasons why I believe that America are going head above shoulders better than us over here over the pond is, firstly, is because you've had these mental health asylums and you've got this research of hundreds of years. We do have it as well, but I don't believe we've got as much hands-on as you do over there. And the passion that you guys have of whatever that you do, and whatever it is that you do, you're very passionate about it. Now, we do have passion, but we're very inwards. We're very stiff upper lip and say, okay, I'm very passionate about this, but I'm going to tell myself how passionate I am about it. I'm not going to tell everybody else. Where I think over there, over where you are at the moment, having this mental health asylum for many generations, and just it's second nature to send someone there. What should we do? I don't know, give them drugs, that'll sort it out. And where we are now with that different movement of awareness that mental health matters as such, really does take the stigma away from it. So, it's not bad to go to a mental health asylum, because let's rebrand that and let's have it as a safe space, as a nice place to go where other people that have seen trauma can relate and have that same conversation and realize that I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. You don't need to tie me to a bed. You don't need to give me however much drugs or however milligrams this or however milligrams of that. I'm happy just to talk it out. Don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest fan of talking therapy. I think it takes too long. But I really do like that inclusivity, because one of the pillars of depression is isolation. And one of the best ways to overcome depression is to be less isolated. So I think you guys, whatever it was back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and it's not anymore, it's now come to fruition. It's really taking a lead in the world.
It's honestly like really cool to take care of yourself is what I've noticed from the marketing. And I know especially, COVID, everybody in their house, and everybody had to switch up their marketing. And those like online therapists, the app that you can download and pay them like $20 a day or something like that, or however long. I know that those systems just went through the roof. A lot of people, had to face themselves in that time, which, I mean, if there's anything good out of COVID, it's that a lot of people got a lot of introspection out of it. But yeah, I mean, it's all about branding here. Like you could do anything you wanted with the right brand in America. That's what I've noticed looking through a lot of things. And it's really cool to take care of yourself. And I mean, I'm sure that will lead us 10 times stronger further in the future for a lot of mental health stuff, because I still know that there are stigmas out there and, people that kind of just feel about it the old way. I think that through the awareness in mental health is everyone is noticing that our society was built for just left brain. Our military was made for just the logical, masculine, no emotion. All the workplaces were set up that way. And the more like awakening we have, and the more everybody's kind of wondering where the right brain is in society or fits into society, then I think we're all getting curious on maybe not like a spiritual or consciousness level, which I mean, that's definitely my level, but even just to keep it grounded on like, why don't I get to access both hemispheres of my brain at work? Why is the only left side of my hemisphere lit up for all of this? Like, where does the feminine fit in? And I know, especially with you talking about like how very masculine you had to be in the rough area that you were, like, you hit first, you shoot first type stuff. We are in a very overmasculated society, which is why we have females that are 10 times more alpha than, what women used to be with the whole housewife role in all of that. But it's the awareness, I think, is what's getting everybody. And they're wondering what is missing? Why was it designed this way? Like, I think all of us collectively are starting to ask the right questions, maybe not all at the right times. And I think that's why people like you obviously went through the last 20 years or so with your direct experiences. And now you've been able to bring us Remaster Your Mind. Because again, there's nothing out like that. And I think there's a reason that it exists now and not necessarily like, you know, let's have you be born in the 70s and try this. Like, it probably wouldn't work at all, right? Like, talk about a stigma. But now, I mean, I know you're in the United Kingdom, and I think that you'll find great success anywhere that anybody hears about you. But this is visionary stuff. Like, this is not only building it now, but it's futuristic. And I mean, I got your mental health journal in the mail today, literally the perfect timing. And I was telling you earlier, just flipping through it, this is formatted for my brain. I'm right-brained. I lived my corporate life in my left hemisphere, and I succeeded as somebody I was not. So I'm very happy for that, but I'm also happy that there are creators out there like you that are making stuff for people like my brain. I know there's a whole like autism spectrum, neurodivergent community. I literally just know that I'm right-brained and I'm supposed to create, and I have 20 years of creations that I shoved down. And I was like, no, I'm not supposed to create. I'm supposed to be a pencil pusher somewhere, living somebody else's dream for them. I'm not special. And then, you know, turns out we all have a purpose. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's like 3 questions, and I hope they bleed into each other correctly. And if they don't, whatever. So,
okay. I'm looking forward to this.
yes. So if I am going to get hypnotized by you, can you explain to me, not necessarily like how you hypnotize me, but can you explain the separation of the subconscious and the conscious for me?
It's perception. So if we look at what the conscious is, and we look at what the subconscious is, we should treat them as 2 separate entities. For example, your conscious mind it's everything that you do during the day that is made from a decision that you've made or someone's made against you. For example, if you pick up a pen, that's your conscious mind saying, I want to pick up this pen. If you, I don't know, when you wake up in the morning and say, right, I'm going to pop to the toilet. The first thing I'm going to do is go to the toilet. That's the decision. You can hold it, and you can do whatever you want to do. That's your conscious mind saying, I want to do this. And that's what takes you through from getting up in the morning to going to sleep at night, or attempting to go to sleep at night. The subconscious is the emotions that we feel and that go around us whilst we're doing these conscious things. We should always look at them as 2 very separate identities, as I said a second ago. We need to identify that our conscious mind is a want, a need. I need to do this, I want to do that. Subconscious mind is, but what about this? What about that? So when we identify the 2 differences, when we go into hypnosis, we work on different wavelengths, the alpha waves, beta wave, the gamma. So when you're sleeping, for example, and you dream, your eyes go into REM, the rapid eye movement, and that's what I use. I identify that I can use the REM before we get hypnotized. So I would use that as an introduction. When I'm hypnotizing someone, I want to know their root cause, the root problem, the reason why they're feeling suicidal, anxious, depressed. They have these ideations, or they're just feeling low, that their inner critic are being really nasty towards them, and they've ignored their inner cheerleader. So why is that? And as just before we started recording this, we spoke about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, what I was saying to you there is how I like to explain it simply of coping mechanisms that work and don't work. I know that I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but I'll see if I can squeeze myself back in.
I'm still right here with you, bud. Keep going.
Brilliant. So when we look at riding a bike and we fall off that bike and we graze our knee, then there's blood all over the shin. our subconscious is saying, don't do that again. Don't ride that bike. And what we need to do is just move forward. We need to avoid using that bike altogether. That's not the root cause. The root cause is not even falling off the bike. The fact that you've got a graze in your knee and it's bleeding, that's not, the wound is not the root cause. They're just all symptoms of a root cause, the main problem. And if we rewind back to when you're a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, your parents or guardians like, okay, this is the best way to go on your bike, sit on here, and they put the stabilizers on, or they take the stabilizers off, whatever that looks, and you are taught how to ride that bike. Well, it might not be in the same terrain, it might not be on the same gradient, there's reasons and roots behind you learning to ride a bike when you're 3 to when you are when you're 25. And if you're doing different terrain, if you're doing different gradients, then there's a good chance you're going to fall off. Now, instead of focusing on the blood coming from your knee or trying to bind the wound up, that's where we're looking with with a conscious mind. What I need to do is stop the bleeding. What I need to do is patch the blood. Okay, now they've patched the blood, I'm now either going to mark and avoid or not go cycling at all. When I go into hypnotherapy, I push away all the coping mechanisms of avoiding or whatever that is. The conscious mind saying, I don't want to do this, I'm going to run away from it. And I focus on the root cause. When was the first time you went on your bike? What feelings and emotions did you have surrounding you learning how to? Yes, you may have felt an accomplishment, but it might not have been the best way to ride the bike. And now if we look at that, again, a tangible riding a bike to an emotional, when I was 8 years old, my siblings used to punish me because I acted different to them. And I acted differently by, I don't know, I'm making this up completely randomly. If I enjoy reading a book, and I'm going to read a book every single night, and then your siblings say, well, don't read a book, books for nerds, books for geeks. What you need to do is go outside and play. And then you grow up and you avoid reading books, although you used to have that very desire. But now as an adult, you're fearful of reading a book. Now again, very different tangent I'm going on about. But yeah, should we cancel that bit? I went a bit too.
No, it's actually connecting really well because it reminded me of a therapy session that I was watching on YouTube or reading, I can't remember. And the lady said, go back to the moment before the world got you, before they got you, before your parents got you, your siblings programmed you. She's like, go back to that person. And I remember just doing that for myself. And I was like, okay, go back to Cheyenne before the world got me. And it would have been 8 years old on my family farm. So like I'm immediately taken back to standing on the fence line of our farm, looking off into like a big field of wheat. And then, the guide at that point would have been like, tell me what you see, tell me how you feel, tell me what you smell. And
okay,
that's always what I go back to. That's what I'm picturing when you're...
Brilliant. Okay, then I'll leave that in and then I'll carry on to the next bit.
Yep.
So if we identify the root cause of why we're anxious, and if we look at this scenario where you didn't realize it with your headspace where you are right now, but when you were 8, your siblings used to insult you, they used to assault you, they used to hurt your feelings, and you had that learned belief to stop reading. And you had that learned belief that when you're around the siblings, you feel anxious because you're trying to do the things to please them rather than please yourself. And now as you are as an adult, you find yourself pleasing other people and never pleasing yourself. So when we go into hypnotherapy with a specific reason, my problem is I'm anxious, my problem is I'm a people pleaser, my problem is whatever. You'll see that there's lots and lots of different results and symptoms of that one problem. As you say, that big problem that they're looking at is anxiety. I'm really anxious. Why am I really anxious? Well, underneath anxiety, there's people pleasing. There's fear. There's worry that you're not going to do the right thing at the right time. But as soon as you take away that anxiety problem, that bubble of anxiety, everything else will just weave away. It will just unweave the problems that you're facing. So a long way around the answer that what you're you're saying is how can you identify the two, the conscious and the subconscious, is the fact that your conscious mind it reacts on everything that's happening, even though it's reacting from a time that you can't remember. Where your subconscious will always remember back to that time. Do this. Stop me from reading, stop me from doing this. And I changed from there because I didn't want to be assaulted, insulted, or isolated, or whatever it is that they used to do. And what I want to do as an 8-year-old is be included. So I'm going to stop reading the book. And that's why I don't read books as an adult. So when someone comes to me, for example, a very, very made-up scenario, if someone says, why am I anxious? Well, it's because when you were that age, this is one scenario of when you were anxious, but you're no longer anxious. Well, sorry, you were anxious, but you're no longer wanting to be that person to read that book. You wanted to change. So you started learning life as an 8-year-old. Your 8-year-old started focusing. So the way you are in life now as a 25-year-old walking through you still have the mindset of that 8-year-old person that wants to people please, that wants to not be anxious, not to be included. You want to be included. You don't want to read that book because it's the wrong thing. What hypnotherapy does is has a direct conversation with the subconscious and says, hey, why do you feel the way that you're feeling? And then you sort of unbind it. You pull the veil up and say, hey, start thinking of a 25-year-old wise mind rather than the 8-year-old juvenile mind. And that's where we are in the world today. We're all walking around with learned beliefs. We're all walking around with the mindset, the ideation that we should be doing stuff as we were taught by our parents, our siblings, our teachers. Or they, as you're saying, they're trying to pigeonhole me by making me work in an office somewhere. Well, that's come from a very young age. I don't want to work in that office, but I'm going to because that's what society's told me I need to do. Where in fact, if you let you bloom, you can take on the world. Does that answer your question?
Well done. I already know when I ask you a question, I'm going to get paragraphs back, and I want that. So, on with my other 2 questions that I think should intertwine. Can you explain the difference in PTSD and CPTSD to me?
Absolutely, I can. But first of all, to understand what PTSD is, it's all your emotions simultaneously reacting. It's also when you've got no control over your subconscious. Your subconscious takes over your body. And let me explain that. If you are sitting in your house and you're reading a book, I've got books in the brain, by the way. So you sat down, you're reading your book, and your conscious mind says, I want to read this book because it's been, someone told me the other day to read it, and I've got my hands on it, and I'm really excited to read it. It's got nothing to do with nothing. It's a love novel. It's neither here nor there. Your subconscious takes over. When your conscious mind is relaxed, your subconscious starts identifying other problems that's not there, or maybe there, but not half as detrimental as what it really is. Because your PTSD is when you've lived through some trauma that has affected your life massively. What CPTSD is when you've lived through multiple traumas and you don't know which way is up. Now, for example, generally, if you look at human trafficking or women that are sold as sex slaves, nearly always are diagnosed with CPTSD because it's multiple things in a prolonged time. Whereas PTSD is a singular event that's been traumatic. I'm not taking anything away from it. It's a singular event that has dramatically changed your life. CPTSD is multiple events that's prolonged time and you have no control over what's happening to you because your subconscious is reacting from everything. You're reading a passage in that book and your subconscious is saying, right, we're going to have the Taliban fight through the windows. We're going to have the tax man come in. We're going to have the police raid the house. Like, what's going on? I'm doing nothing wrong. I've not broken the law, but I'm so petrified. My heart is racing at 200 beats per minute. Why am I feeling like this? PTSD is your subconscious trying to make sense. By the way, if you think about it, Your conscious mind is very logical. It's like, okay, if I pick up that pen, I know basically the weight of it, so I can judge that if I pick it up, it's not going to be a heavy object, and it's nice. It's very logical minded. If I put pen to that bit of paper, then it's going to write nicely. Your subconscious is emotion that holds no logic at all. And if you put a war against logic and emotion, emotion is always going to win. PTSD is when emotion is taking over the logical side of the body. And you make no sense of what's going on. You're almost in a shadow of your former self. You have no idea. You're scared of everything. You're anxious. You're fearful. You're depressed. But at the same time, you're angry. You're regretful. You're guilty. And you want to fight the world. Or however it is, because everybody that has PTSD will have it differently to somebody else, regardless of who they are. Does that answer the question, or have I missed a bit out?
Oh, no. Per usual, you answered it exactly the way that I wanted it. I love it. Okay, and then I believe that there is a misconception on PTSD. Just so, like, I learned about military PTSD because of my siblings coming back from Iraq and us being educated on. These are things that you have to look for in your soldiers. They're not just going to come out and go, oh, hey, I have PTSD, because most people don't even know that they have it. So me growing up, I honestly just believe that PTSD was something that you got from being in active military and going through all the traumas of being separated from your family and, you know, all the stuff that you go through in the military that the family really aren't there for. Obviously, growing up, you find, like, okay, there's people who have been human trafficked and they're going to be under CPSD. But what about something like an abusive relationship or getting out of a traumatic marriage or something like that? Like, how do you break down who has PTSD?
Okay. It is a disorder from something very traumatic. Now, there are a number of different things that will highlight to a physician to see if they do or do not have PTSD. The two pillars of PTSD are anxiety and depression. There are many other fallouts of PTSD, but those are the top two. Anxiety, which is the purest of fear. It's your most raw emotion of fear. And depression, you can break that down, as I said, to four different areas. The first one, as I stated earlier on, was isolation. So you want to isolate yourself from the rest of the world. Now, your subconscious generally, specifically is there to protect you. Your subconscious says, I need to protect this vessel, the soul in this vessel. I want to look after it. Now, what I want to do is isolate it from all those nasty, horrible humans, which is a massive contradiction because we're social creatures. We need to have that society. We need to integrate to keep sanity. We don't need to, but it's a very strong point of being sane. Unless people generally want to isolate themselves for whatever reason, and that reason generally is something traumatic. So breaking those four pillars down, isolation being the one of them, the other one is depression. What I mean by depression is suppression, when you're suppressing all of your emotions. So if you are saying, do you know what, I'm feeling really bad today, I don't want to feel bad, so I'm going to push that emotion all the way down so I can't feel it anymore. But the problem is when you push a emotion down, you're pushing all your emotions down. And that's joy, happiness, anger, hate, regret, all these different things. You're pushing them all down, and you're literally becoming a robot. You are just an empty shell that's going through the world, but then two emotions float back up to the surface. Regret and anger. Now, anger is a secondary emotion. The first part of anger is hurt or vulnerability. If you find yourself that you're vulnerable, you very quickly become angry on top of it as a defense mechanism. So depression, second part, these got these two. So you find someone's overtaken you, and then they cut you off, and you're very fearful of your own life. Like, oh my God, that guy's nearly killed me and my children and my partner, and oh my God, very, very instant. That very small feeling of vulnerability is then massively overshadowed by the anger that you've now got the road rage. So that's the second part of depression. The third part is wanting to have something that he is unable to achieve. So it may be your partner's died and you really want to be a part of them. You want to be with them again. But you can't. It's just unattainable. It's unachievable. Or it might be you might be a millionaire and you've got no money at all anymore. Whatever it is, tangible or intangible, if you want it and you can't get it, it's a very big pillar of depression. Now, the last point of what depression is the nasty, horrible things your inner critic is saying to you, and that you believe it. The worst things that you're saying to yourself, and that truly, you look into the mirror and say, I don't want to look at myself anymore because I hate who I'm looking at because I am not enough. That's the last pillar. So if we're looking at the two pillars of PTSD, the first one being anxiety, the purest form of fear, and the second one being depression, with the 4 pillars, then you have all the bits that fall out the other end of it. Maybe there could be negative triggers. Now, there's a difference between positive flashbacks and negative flashbacks. If you look through that journal that I wrote, I think I put it quite nicely to say that you could be walking past, or you brush past a lady and you smell her perfume and you go, oh my God, do you know, I love that perfume. It reminds me of when I was 6 years old and my grandmother had the exact same perfume, and you can almost feel the sun on your shoulders as you see the smile on her face, and you get really that tingly, warm feeling. It's like, oh, this is amazing. I love that feeling. That's a positive flashback. A negative flashback is your time in the green zone, or you being a human trafficked, and something happens. Maybe you identify someone's watch. Say, I recognize that watch. And then you flash back to a time where you saw that. You may not have any memory, just the sheer fear or the anxiety from it. You're like looking at the watch going, oh my God, that's the same watch that this guy had. When Uncle Steve had that when I was 8, and he done nasty, horrible things to me. That's a negative flashback, and you can almost smell his sweat. You just feel the dark emotions surrounding that specific time. Now, anything can bring you back. Anything. It could be, as I said, the smell. As soon as any of your senses go off, it can fire you straight back. And it's out of the blue. It's like this. You know, whoa, where did this come from?
Where did this come from? Yep.
Yeah. And you're like, what? Why? How long is it going to last for? And then when you sort of come to and say, oh, do you know what? I remember one time I had blood all over my hands from being in Iraq or Afghan. I can't remember which one right now, but I just remember looking at my hands saying, what the fuck? And then a few years back, before I was going through my transition of getting my headspace, I was cutting my dog's claws, and I nipped a little bit too much, and a little bit of blood on my hands. There wasn't a lot of blood, just a little bit, but that took me right back to both my hands being covered in blood and looking up, and I was like, whoa! I could smell the air, I could feel the dust on my fingers, and it's just a horrible. That's a negative flashback. So there's like a whole range of different emotions that you're going to go through. From you can't sleep at night, where all you're doing is just either thinking logically or emotionally and thinking, oh my God, tomorrow I need to sort that out, and I need to do this because if I do that, I need to sort my car out because it needs to be going to the garage, or I need to make sure that I'm seeing this person or that person at this time because if I don't, then that's going to be a problem. And emotionally, you're thinking, oh my God, when I had a chat with Steve the other day, or Brian or David, they must think I'm a terrible person because I didn't say goodbye to them and I just left abruptly. Whatever it is, your emotions just taking over that thought process, and you can't fall asleep. Or insomnia, you just can't sleep at all. There's lots of different symptoms to PTSD. Although I'm just going to go on another little tangent, if you don't mind. As I said a second ago, your subconscious is there to protect you. It's to protect your soul, it's to protect your vessel. However you look at it, it's there to protect you. And it will give you gifts. And those little gifts are symptoms. And if you put all those gifts together, people identify that as PTSD. I'll give you the gift of not sleeping. I'll give you the gift of anxiety. I'll give you the gift of stress. I'll give you the gift of all these different things, and you can't proceed. If you pull them out one by one and say, why? Why can't I not sleep? Why do I have anxiety? Why do I have depression? Why do I want to fight the world? And all these different things. you will realize step by step that your subconscious is saying the best thing I can do for you, because it doesn't think of logic, it thinks of emotion, is if I give you anxiety, then you're not going to leave the house. If I give you depression, then that means you're going to be isolated and you're not going to meet those people that you've met before. If I make you really tired, then you're going to be too tired to go to work, so you might as well quit. If I say nasty, horrible things about yourself, you're never going to push your own boundaries. You're never going to push yourself to the next level. But it doesn't understand that all these things that it's given you as gifts are actually hindering you on a massive scale. And that's where hypnotherapy comes in, for me to have that conversation with the subconscious and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Thank you very much for giving me anxiety, because, you know what, back then, it worked. It helped me from that problem that I was faced with. But this is 10 years later. I've lived past that and I want to move past that. I want to broaden my horizon, but I can't, because you're still giving me the gift to get over that event that happened 10 years ago. So, does that answer the question of what you was asking for?
Yes, it definitely does. It does.
Does anything need to clear that at all? I do apologise for going on a tangent.
No, I love your tangents. They're called tree branches on my show, Gareth. They're never tangents. And there's a lot of depth to all of your answers, so that's why I try not to interrupt, because I know you're like basically channeling a script. I don't want to interrupt, but no, you really cleared up a lot of things, even for me, like just personally when we were talking, you're like, I think there is a misconception on who can get PTSD and what it even is. And I mean, especially over here, again, the first time I learned about it was military PTSD. So that's as far as like my knowledge went with it. I've looked more into it just after, doing my own healing and all of that fun stuff. I have found, I've never been diagnosed, but I definitely think that if I went and talked to somebody, they would be like, yes, you have a percentage. That's probably why you act the way you do. But I do think it's really important to pull all those terms apart, just because they all do kind of get blended together easily. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is your mental health journal. Like I said, it came in the mail today, so I just wanted you to talk about what inspired you to write this. Like I said, I'm actually going to do it on and off on my TikTok just to keep myself accountable on it, but it is something that I look forward to adding into my healing regimen. But since I have the author right in front of me, I think it would be super stupid to not talk about your inspiration for making this mental health journal.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. So that journal's been taking me the best part of 2 years to write, and it's only been about 3 weeks ago since I had it published. So when I was in the army, I was a very sharp edge to a very pointy stick, and when I transferred over to the Army Welfare Service to help soldiers and their dependents, where I could say, do you know what, I've been there and I've done that, and I can help you because I can empathise and I can see the path that you've taken. I took on board everything that was being said and I learned a lot, but I didn't truly learn how it was fixing me. Now, I've said it earlier on, I'm not a big fan of talking therapy, but I was a talking therapist in the army. And I was helping people with their own dealings, and I was giving them coping mechanisms to get over it, over a long period of time or a short period of time. Everybody's different. When I come to leave the army, I left the army with having been diagnosed with PTSD, and I felt like a rabbit in the headlights. I was a bit lost. I was like, how do I push past this? I've got this diagnosis of PTSD. Now I'm reading of what it means, but that's not a true reflection of what it is for me. So I took all my learning and I took all my awareness of how other people have reacted from the way I've been helping them. And it was my wife, Dana, that says to me after I left, like, why don't you put all your stuff together and create your own company? And then she put me in alignment or awareness of RTT, rapid transformational therapy. And if you was to tell me back then, RTT or hypnotherapy, in the mindset I would have just laughed at you. I was in a very different headspace where I am now. I knew that I wanted to help people, but hypnotherapy was so unmasculine, and it was so out of my 45s, out of my awareness, that I would have brushed it off until I saw firsthand what it was. And then I was able to use my teachings from the army, from being in Afghan and Iraq, and once in Iran. That was an accident. Luckily, nothing come of that. Anyway, we got into. I learned a lot about helping people, even if it's just going to the bar and having a pint with them and saying, "Hey, come on, let's you had a problem with me, and I've got a problem with you. Let's have this fight. Let's get it over and done with, and then let's have another pint, and then see where the night takes us." Usually fighting somebody else. That was called coping mechanism. It was brilliant, and it worked, and it got you through the problems. And I'm still with this very mindset. I've now left the army, and I've not got that camaraderie anymore. I've not got that live, raw. I've got the raw emotions, but there's nothing to bounce it off. And then I've got all my teachings, and on top of that, I've got an awareness of what RTT or rapid transformational therapy is. And I've amalgamated it all into this business of Remaster Your Mind. And I was having two different types of clients. The first client was a standard client that comes to me with anxiety or sleep problems, just very isolated problems. I was doing my natural thing with them when it comes to hypnotherapy, but I also had my VIPs, which is my PTSD reserved clients. And I'll be working with them one-to-one, which is over a period of 3 months. So people was walking through the door and saying, "Hey Gareth, I've got a really big problem. I can't, every time I go into public, I cry, I fall on the floor, or I go into hospitals and I just be begging people to help me and I don't know what's going on." And at the end of the 3 months, they'll be walking out the door, singing, dancing, Wi-Fi high-fiving me. It would be great outcomes that I was seeing. And I started picking apart that. I was like, why? Why do they come and see me on day one, and 3 months down the line, they're walking out the door a completely different person? And I realised it was the care packages that I was sending out. It's not only the care packages, but they massively helped. And in and amongst, threaded in amongst the care packages, was the actual hypnotherapy that I've been doing, and the coaching sessions in between the hypnotherapy that I've been doing. And the amalgamation of the three of them was really, really helping. Now, in my care package, I would have a journal, just a standard journal that says, write what's happened during the day. I'd also have a life cycle, where I highlight areas within your life, how out of 10, 0 being terrible, 10 being amazing. Okay, finances, how is that impacting on your day? Or how is your sleep impacting on your day? And this is the cycle my clients would just sort of tick it off and see where they are. And then when we'd have a coaching sessions, they would feed that information back to me. There was also lots of information that I'd be given to them, like, for example, if they're having a panic attack, what is a panic attack? How do you postpone it? How do you stop it? How do you control it? And so I was given all this information in my care packages that I was sending out. And I just had the idea one day. I thought, how can I reach to help more people without being there? Because I want to help as much people as I can. If no one knows who I am at all, I don't care. But if everybody has a journal that they've been given by somebody else, then that's what I want. I want that person to be in a better headspace, regardless where they got this information from. Now, if there's someone that's doing this exact same thing that I'm doing, well done them. High five to you, because you're helping the people that need it most. So I kind of created my mental health journal out of my care package that I was sending clients, the advice that I'd give them, and the journey that they would take. So again, hopefully that's answered the question. If not, I'll happily explain a little bit more on the different...
No, I just wanted to know how you came up with the journal idea. And I mean, everything you say is great, but the last minute and 30 seconds is I think exactly what I was looking for, especially looking over your website. I know that you want to be the global face of PTSD as far as helping people. And the humility you have with obviously publishing this and then being like, I don't care if you know who Gareth is, but I'm telling you from direct experience, that journal, it's going to help you. And I think it'll help. My favorite thing about like books and journals like this, especially, you get to go at your own pace. Nobody has to know that you have this journal, especially for like people in the military that, you know, are still really clinging to that stubbornly masculine, it's okay to not feel anything aspect of their personality. I think it's great to just have and work through it by yourself. I mean, obviously I'll be telling everybody because that's my job, is to tell everybody about all the things I love to work with. But I mean, I want to highlight it just because people don't have to know that you are working on yourself. If you're one of those people that stigmatize yourself and you don't want people to know that you're seeking help or anything. I don't mind that people know I seek help all day long. But what you have created here is perfect for whether you're left or right-brained. And I wanted to point that out. Because I have like a 5-year journal, but it is not a mental health journal. It's just a fun journal that you write different things in every day. So then like 5 years from now, you can remember what you ate 3 years ago for fun. This definitely has a lot more depth to it, but at the same time, it still has that playfulness feel, if that makes sense. I'm not taking everything so serious. And I really enjoy that the person that wrote it has direct experience with everything that you're teaching and talking about. I think that adds 10 times more credibility than it could ever be from someone who like just went to school and got a degree. No offense to anybody out there like that. I certainly just jam better with the people who have actually walked in the fire.
Right, okay.
Okay.
So what you'll find, everything in your life is a reaction. Absolutely everything in your life is reaction. The very fact that you were born is a reaction from your biological parents or the test tube, or whatever it is, making the decision for you to react, for the cells to react. Where you are right now is a reaction. When you were 3 years old, you have reacted in order to make it fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and flop. Everything from school, not wanting to do something, is a reaction from something else. Your life is just a course of reactions. Now, many people are reacting from something negative. Many people react from something positive. If you can find the positive in any scenario, that's a great thing. But so many people get caught up, get stuck in the past, which they've reacted to. And as I said before, whatever it is that however it is that they've reacted from that same thing, that they may or not remember even today, they're still reacting the same way. If we can go and look at our childhood, if we can go back and rethink our experiences as an adult, that's where we are as children, to move forward, to progress forward, and remaster our minds as such. Excuse the pun.
I thought the pun was perfect.
Just as my phone's talking to me.
That's okay. And I think that's a great add-on because you're absolutely right. We have a lot of adults walking around that just think because they just celebrated their 47th birthday that they're actually mentally operating at 47 years old. So I think it's a constant reminder that we all need to audit and check in with ourselves and ask where we're actually operating from, or why did we do that thing that we did that we know we didn't want to do.
Yeah. For example, our parents wanted the best of us. I believe, well, not every parent wants the best of us.
The good parents, you know.
The good parents want the best of us.
Yes.
Unfortunately, from their own mishaps as they were children, from their reactions, they've got a different perspective of life of what we would want. Mm-hmm. Now, most of our parents, I say all of our parents, and there's no such thing as a perfect parent. As much as I'd like them to be, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. They will do something wrong. And what you can find is that our parents will give us injunctions. they will stop us from doing something that we believe we want to do or need to do. Let me explain a little bit more. If you're saying, when you was a kid, I love climbing trees, and your parents say, oh, you climb that tree, you're going to fall out and you're going to hurt yourself. You're like, well, I better not climb trees. Or you're going to give yourself that barrier. And these injunctions create barriers to us, even though our parents may or may not want to hinder us. We are hindered by those people around us.
That's a very valid point. I can think of, man, how many times when I was a kid that my parents' voice would pop up in my head as like, you know, my conscience or like the Jiminy, but they would also pop up as like the fear voice and like, oh, you don't do that, you don't do that, you don't do that. And it took me until my late 20s to actually identify the voices in my head actually weren't my own.
Yeah.
And my parents probably like would not believe that. They're like, you never listen to us, so I don't know how we got stuck on record in your head. But yeah, like I had to like meditate it out where I was like, I'm the voice in my head. Like I am asserting the mastery of my real self. And then I will say it over and over. And now like, yeah, I mean, besides like all the clairsenses, we don't have to get into that just to keep it like grounded. I have a very good relationship with my higher self, or in clinical psychology, it's called future self. So I mean, really just doing the things day to day to help your future self. I have a lot of fun stories where I have either written to my future self or written to my past self. However, I've done that. And I didn't know that those were actually really cool therapeutic modalities that people teach others to connect with themselves. And I had actually been doing it since I was a kid, especially writing to my future self. That was a really big one for me. And then I would make it to that future date, and then I would read it, and I would just be like, oh, thank you so much, Cheyenne from 2 years ago, for writing this to me. Like, we did it. We did everything we said we were going to do. And then I'll like sit there that day and I'll write to, you know, whatever future person I'm connecting with that day. But it is really powerful, and it does go to say that like the woke parenting movement that is going on, where everybody just wants to like bash their parents for not being some 100% example of a parent, and now they're struggling with being a parent. That's not the way that I would sell it. My parents were not educated on being emotionally unavailable, nor was anybody in our society at the time, and mental health was a complete stigma of, you know, left brain society. If you have emotions, you're weak. So to say that like our parents were emotionally unavailable would be correct, but to use it in a derogatory statement where it is their fault is incorrect. So I always try to like pad lightly on that, because my parents never did anything with like horrible intention towards me. I also believe in like soul contracts and life lessons. So, you know, if my parents were supposed to give me some tough lessons that I didn't really feel a child needed to get from a parent, I chalk it up to that's a life lesson for my soul growth. And I can analyze the emotion of it to heal and make sure it's not stored in my body and I'm subconsciously reacting in my day-to-day life. But through a lot of just self-introspection like you've done and studying, we really all here just to learn. I feel sorry for the people that don't want to learn the lessons and want to continue to live in a victim mindset. I'm not a therapist or a doctor or anything like that. I have people that just come to me for very private conversations, sometimes energy work and, you know, whatever divination tool you're comfortable with. But I've backed away from wanting to be so vocal about it when I read something that said, before you heal someone, you should ask them if they want to stop like what's making them sick. And I find a lot of people they want the cure and they would still like to put the poison in the cabinet. And that's really tough when all you want is for people to just grow and be better and the best version of themselves. And, you know, like you said, like I'm a fan of watching people have epiphanies and transformational life moments, their aha moments, and I get it, and I get to pull myself out of my own pit now. Those are my favorite things in life. And luckily I get a lot of people that they would still like to stay addicted to their drug of choice or whatever, and then they still enjoy the euphoria of the awareness, you know? So I think there's a lot of compassion that goes into what you do. And if I can ever find a label for what I do, I will send you a business card, I promise.
I'll definitely look you up.
I don't know if I rehearsed this one or not. It's just one more question I have before we can say our goodbyes. But do you have any advice for either like after tips of leaving the military, or even how you would go about asking for help? Like, what if I go to the VA and their PTSD stuff just really isn't my thing and I haven't found you yet? Like, what would be something you would say to them? I know it's tough.
It is tough.
Yeah, I know there's not like one answer.
No, but one of the big things in the military is camaraderie. So I would absolutely 100% say, regardless of how big of a hole you're sat in, tell someone about it. Tell the guys that were in the military with you, because there's a very good chance that they're in their own hole, and at least you can share the hole. Mm-hmm. Now, again, if we're looking at depression, I think once again the 4 pillars of depression, because when the military is a way of life, and once you change that way of life, when you no longer have the orders, you no longer have the exercises, the tours, the weaponry, you don't have that way of life anymore, and that could be seen as one of the pillars of depression, having something you no longer got, unachievable. But if we focus on the isolation part, well, that's the 2 of them. If you're isolated, one of the pillars, having something you're unable to achieve anymore, that's another pillar. And you're going to be saying nasty, horrible things about yourself. That's the 3rd pillar. And naturally, as soldiers are, they're very stoic and they push all their emotions down. I'm not saying every soldier is going to be depressed, but there's a good chance if you're leaving the military without any goals, without any plans, then you could find yourself in a very slippery slope. So what I would say is set yourself goals every single day. The smallest of goals. It could be, today I want to have a shower. It could be, today I want to apply for a job. I want to set up my own company. I want to learn something new. I want to say hello to the closest person to me, even if that's the cashier, even if it's the barman. I want to communicate with someone. Doesn't matter. Reach out to someone, preferably old friends. Never lose your friends. You may have forgotten about them for a short period of time, but bring them back into your life, because otherwise there may not be a space for them anymore. Now, so I'd say reach out to your old friends, because they've been through the same shit you've been through. They've eaten the same crap that you've had to eat. So they're going to know it. They're going to get it. Because they've experienced it. Number 2, set yourself goals. Doesn't matter how small they are. Make sure, as long as they're achievable. I'm not trying to say set the world on fire. I'm not saying to build Rome in a day. Just have goals. And give yourself positive affirmations, because if you set yourself positive affirmations, you can listen to yourself, and you can bring that inner cheerleader out, and you can be the best version of yourself. The military has shown you, has taught you so many life skills. The whole world look at you with awe. They're like, oh wow, you're amazing because you've done all this stuff. Regardless of what that is, you've learned a lot. Maybe it be leadership skills. Maybe it be tactics. You can apply those into the civilian world so much, and you've got so much prospect to be an amazing person. You just need to tell yourself the truth that you are a good person. You have learned, I don't know if you are or not a good person, but you have learned many, many skills, life lessons that everybody else wants to learn. You're disciplined. Otherwise you wouldn't have made it through the army if you weren't disciplined. You are aware, and you need to give yourself these positive affirmations. You need to give yourself these goals. So there's the 3 things: positive affirmations, goals, and reach out Maybe to be a professional, maybe to be an old comrade, maybe to be Steve down the road that's just opened his own bar. At least if you're having a pint, then you can have a bit of therapy.
That's perfect advice. Absolutely perfect. I was going to add in affirmations, but you said it, so my advice is out. And that's just retraining the brain, which I know you understand that 100%, which when we were doing our own manager training for a much lighter job than what you were doing, it was 21 times to form a habit. So you had to do it like 21 times to really lock it in. And then when I understood, basically just, well, like negative, there's a lot of density and like negative pathways anyways. So you have to say like 3 positive things in the beginning. And when I actually put that into everyday action, I kind of like giggled how I was like, it's extremely hard to be positive right now. And I have lived years just operating at this level and like silencing that inner critic is one thing, but even just like being jealous or envious or judgmental of like everything around you. Oh, I can't believe she wore that. Oh, can't believe this. Just like I look at the world completely different now where I'm like, oh, that's really pretty. They put that flower display there. Oh, I like that painting. Whoever painted that house that color, that's really cool. Oh, the sky looks pretty. I wonder what that tree is. Like, I don't fit in because I really do stop and smell the roses. That's what I got from my transformational healing. Like, and the work's not done. I tell everybody, I'm like, I know I'm 31 years old. I was like, but I'm only 4 years old. Like, I just woke up 4 years ago and just started unpacking all of the stuff from my life that I thought that I got to run away from. So I'm probably going to say some weird stuff sometimes because I'm like, at least I'm being honest. And I struggle now more in public than I did in my younger years just because I'm 10 times more honest and like I can't deal with people's facades and masks and bullshit. Like I don't want to have like surface level conversations half the time. So I'm very blessed with a charismatic husband who can talk normally and about like stuff, I just like nod and and then they're like, what do you do for a living? And my husband's like, and we're gonna lose him. Well, Gareth, I really appreciate you coming on. And if you ever feel like coming on and even like teaching an info episode, I would be totally interested in having you on again and just educating us more on your program and the way that you want to help people.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you know, I'd like to just leave this. If you are having problems sleeping, do you mind earlier on I was talking about the logic and emotion? On my website, I've got a free deep relaxation recording, and it's used from something from both the Nice Templar use of the Divine Holy Frequency of 111 hertz, and my voice to either very hopefully calming for you, where you can bring the logic and emotion together, where you can just fall asleep naturally. It's very, very powerful. I wouldn't recommend driving and listening to the recording. So if you do have problems with sleep and you don't even want to look who I am, just jump in, just grab it. If you take nothing away from this, if you're having problems sleep or if you know someone that can sleep, then just go and grab it. And if you want it on your phone, if you've got WhatsApp, send me an email and I'll happily WhatsApp over to you. Just send me your phone number, of course. And I'll fire it over to you and you can listen to it when you're going to bed.
Well, that's wonderful because I used it the day that you sent it to me, and I even put it out on your post today because I'm a big fan of telling people stuff that works for me. And yes, I felt like going right to sleep when I got it on. I thought your voice was very soothing, and I am all about anything Divine 111. So when you said 111 hertz frequency, I was like, oh, baby, you are speaking my language. So again, I appreciate you putting that out there. I'll definitely have it under your episode notes too, so people can grab it up faster. But like I said, if you need someone to do it for you, I already did, and I highly recommend Gareth's meditation.
Thank you very much.
I look so forward to having you on the show more And yeah, if you want to keep up with my mental health journey on TikTok, feel free, because I'll be telling everybody about your book. I'm pretty sure I already told you this, but one of my favorite things about the show is music, or about me is music, and how I get to bring music to my friends and be like, hey, go check this song out. I just recently went to the Midland Theater in Kansas City, Missouri with my concert family, and we got to watch Goose, which is one of, I think it probably is like my favorite band now. I can stop saying one of. But I'm pretty obsessed with them in like the nicest way you could be. I don't like over fangirl any situation. I'm just like, I'm so proud of you. Keep playing music. You're doing so good. I'm so proud of you. So they're really doing it big. And I brought one of my favorite songs they performed. It's called Born. And he's got a really sweet guitar solo. I hope you can hear it on your end, Gareth. If not, I guess you can hear it when the episode comes out on Spotify. But to my friends that are still with us, this is Born from Goose, live from the Midland Theater. I really hope you enjoy this guitar solo. Have a good day, everybody.